focus. That's all I'm doing. The guy across from me, I'm fixing to whip his ass. Not in my box, not today. It's about us. It's about our family. We attack.
Toup, Smooch, and the Dawg Show. Another new episode is coming up tonight.
It's the Dawg Show. It's the Dawg Show. It's the Dawg Show.
You're listening to the one and only Dawg Show. Your hosts, Toup Brenson and Smooch Moncrief.
Just two dudes talking Georgia football.
This is about the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Welcome, dog fans, to the one and only Dawg Show with Toup and Smooch. And we got a special guest tonight. It's Eric Taylor from the Bulldawg Report, and we're going to bring him on for a segment. We have him on the couch right now. You guys can see him watching our podcast. We wanted to let you know he's in for the show. I do want to say thanks, folks, for tuning in. It's been a great few weeks, man. We warned you, Smooch. We told you folks that just because football, we're in between some sports, it seems like a little bit, but very busy time of year. Georgia's been doing well recruiting, so lots of news to talk about recruiting. And but first of all, just good to see you. And it's been a epically hot week here in the South. And wow, 100 plus degrees around these parts.
I've got a story about that I haven't told you. So I got home today, and I got home early today, so about a half day. I went to the gym, I got home, and I decided I wanted to go for a jog. So I go outside. Now, I'm a man of about 6 feet, around 215 to 225 pounds, depending on what dinner was last night. And so I go out for a run, and I am covered. I am making my own gravy, as they say in the business. I am covered in sweat, and I'm having a good time. I got my little headphones, my little earbuds in my own little world. And this car pulls up next to me and asks me if I'm okay. He said, "You okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." He said, "You seem really hot. Do you need a ride home?" And I was like, "No, I'm doing this on purpose, man." But that's the kind of heat we're dealing with right now, Toup Brenson.
Yeah. And I've been out in it and tried my best to enjoy it and stay active. But, man, we have been following what's going on with the Georgia Bulldogs, of course. It's always something to talk about. We're glad to see some of these other podcasts get going. And I heard Locked On was talking about they were going to talk some recruiting. So I'm like, welcome back. And some of you folks that took a little hiatus, we're glad to see you back.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk today, just to preface this show before we bring Eric on. We're going to talk a little bit about what we have thought that we saw, and we knew that we saw really with that. We'll talk about Alabama, first of all, in the last few years and how that was trending. We got some statistics to show you, and then move that towards where Coach DeBoer is, where he is right now, and what the expectations might be for him. You know, we talk a lot of Georgia football, and we're going to talk Georgia football today. We really enjoy talking about other teams as well, and that kind of adds a little more spice to it. And apparently our rivals like hearing it pretty much.
Yeah, I don't understand. I heard a guy, one of my favorite comments this week was, "Why can't you just leave Alabama alone? We just want to do our thing. Leave us alone." I said, "You're actually on our Twitter as we speak, telling me to leave you alone." That part I find absolutely delightful.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But we will recap some recruiting news. Georgia's had a few commitments the past week. We told you they would, and more to come. And then we got, of course, EA Sports also released, and when their game comes out, the strengths of the teams offensively and defensively, and some very interesting inclusions and some exclusions. I think that's worth talking about, so we'll get to that as well. But first, I want to welcome our good friend, Eric Taylor from the Bulldawg Report. What's going on, my man?
Nothing much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, bud.
So welcome. We've been talking back and forth and you were on was that 100th episode just a few weeks ago, Smooch?
He was on the 100th episode. That's right.
It was a great, good reviews as well. And we've been back and forth a good bit on Twitter and on the, in the background, so to speak, and helping out. I wanted to talk a little bit about something you shared with us, and it was about Alabama's trend over the past few years. I think you had from 2019, 2020 there, and how, I guess, when you want to look at something that's tangible instead of just how you feel about how performance is, those statistics become very important. So can you share a little bit about how you come up with that, or what you did and what you think all that means? And we'll look at the numbers as well.
Okay, so what I did was I took the last 5 years of point differential and total yard margin from Alabama and looked at point differential is the points scored per game for a team subtracted by the points given up per game. So their point margin has actually gone down every year for the last 3 years straight. And the same thing for their total yard margin. Their total yard margin is the same thing, just with yards. What you do is you take your total offensive output in yards and subtract what you gave up in yards on defense. And like I said, it's the same thing. It's a 3-year trending downward.
Yeah, you can see Toup and I just on the eyeball test, and that was exactly it. Around 2021, Toup and I started to say, this doesn't feel. It's still a top 3 team, but it doesn't feel like Alabama in the way we've come to think of it. Something is a bit different. Now, Alabama at 80% is still better than 98% of teams. But the fact is, we saw there was something different, Drew Brinson.
Yeah, it was a dominance. Because when you profess to be the standard, that's become a big word that people throw around now. It's elite as well, but the standard, and they still profess to be that. And the way you win games does matter. And when we're trying to determine who is the standard of college football and who is dominant, because it's Alabama's own fault, really, because they went through such a run where they just dominated people a few years ago. And so we know what it looks like. And when it didn't look like that anymore, and they were having a lot of penalties, and the discipline was not as good, the leadership was not as good, they're still recruiting at the same level. But the product on the field, and me and Smooch talked about it the last 2 years, we said it on the air, if the players are the same, and they have the highest blue chip ratio in college football, and so they have some of the best talent. There's really nobody else like Bama in terms of talent. There's some teams close, but if that's the same, then it's got to be evaluation, development, coaching. And so we were calling that out. And that's why we thought really Saban was not able to maintain that same standard and that same culture it was starting to wear, and it was showing on the field. And these statistics, and I know we put them up on the screen, it also shows you that, but it also shows you Georgia's trend as well, Eric.
Yeah, the same way that I was saying that Alabama was trending down since 2021. Georgia didn't even have a point differential of over 20 in 2019 or 2020.
That's right.
Since 2021, they've had a point differential of 28 in 21, 26 in 22, and 24 in 23. I think if I remember the math correctly, you have to have at least a 25-point margin to be in the national championship conversation. Okay. Now, over that same time, Alabama has been around 19, 22, and 15 the last 3 years.
That's right.
When it comes to total yard margin, you have to be over 2,000 yards to even be in the national championship conversation. So in 19, Georgia was at 1,800. In 2020, they were just at 10,000 or 10,000, 1,000.
1000, yeah.
Yeah. 2021, we got up to 2,600. 22, it was 3,000, which the cool thing about the 3,000 mark is I did every national champion I believe that I did in the college football playoff era. Only 3 teams have had a 3,000 total yard margin in the CFP, and that is 2019 LSU, 2018 Clemson, and 2022 Georgia.
Wow.
And then in 2023, we were actually close to that 3,000 yard mark, total yard margin again with 2,900 yards.
Yeah, you can really see that when we look at that. It kind of goes hand in hand. And look at the yardage margin with Alabama was over 2,000 yards margin in 2022. Georgia was 1,000 more than they were, 3,000. Of course, Georgia went undefeated and won the national championship. Then in 2023, Alabama last year, they really sank down, only a 15-point margin, the lowest of both teams over that whole time span. And then the margin of yardage with the other teams was just over 1,000, and Georgia was still up there close to 3,000. So, and the schedules do matter. Who you play matters, of course. But Georgia is still producing elite offenses while keeping, does offense and defense goes together. We've seen that. And Georgia has been at an elite level for the past 3 years now. And Alabama had their worst year last year, and they made the college football playoff because they won at the right time and lost at the right time as well.
That's true.
But just looking at this, it gives some credence to what we said. Now, Alabama fans, Georgia fans don't really need to hear this. And Alabama fans, they know it, whether they want to admit it or not, that Saban was trending, Saban's teams were trending, even despite having that blue chip ratio and all that talent. Problems were coming.
No, I was going to say, you're talking about a team. Think about this last year. You're talking about a team that was good enough to beat the Georgia Bulldogs in terms of talent in the SEC title game, which they did. Okay, a team that was good enough to beat the Georgia Bulldogs, who hadn't lost in a president, seemingly, and they beat them in the SEC championship. Yet a 15-point differential and a total yard margin of just over 1,000 yards. That tells you the talent is there. It's the rest of it that's not there, Eric.
Exactly. It was Saban himself, I believe, that said 2 years ago that there was starting to become a culture issue in the locker room, and he was kind of pointing. I wish I had a quote because people don't want to listen if you don't have a quote. But I know he was talking about transfers, and this is something a lot of us Georgia fans have talked about. If you rely heavily on transfers, eventually that's going to bite you.
Yeah. So true. And we try and explain that to Ole Miss fans all the time. No one wants to listen, but it's coming.
Yeah. And where that leads us, and we just don't want to pound on Alabama for what they did 2 or 3 years ago. We just letting you know we were right. But
there you go.
where that leads us to is what we think about this next era, if it is an era of Alabama football, because it's going to be post Nick Saban. So it's going to be an era anyway, regardless, the post Nick Saban era. And what that means. And if DeBoer, it's just fun to talk about. Is he the guy? And he's on a good recruiting run right now. And they're using that. Alabama fans are using that to say, we told you nothing's changing. See, we're still out. They're saying that because they were worried. Nothing's changing. We're still getting good recruits. We're still in the top 3, top 4 recruiting. We're going to be okay. DeBoer is that dude. They're Alabama. He's gonna catch some of that. What would you call it? Because they are Alabama and they have been on a run this past 10, 15 years. He's going to get the benefit of some of that until there's evidence to sway recruits in a different direction. Now, if on the field it doesn't look good, then he won't get that benefit in the next few years.
That's right. The evidence, true. I mean, what the evidence bears out is what a great recruiter Saban was. That even being gone and making a few phone calls here and there, which of course he's doing, that they're still able to recruit off the Saban mystique to bring people to Bama. And now there are some other factors here. There are some other things we don't have time to get into. But my point is you're right off of Nick Saban. Of course, there's still going to be that shine. There's still going to be that glitter on your team. So, yeah, you should still have good players wanting to come there. But just as Texas A&M found out with Jimbo Fisher, you still got to get those guys on the field, and you got to put a product out there that can win a football game. It's seemingly unwise to say that Kalen DeBoer may be an upgrade from the best coach that's ever lived. What do you think, Eric?
I think that's crazy. that kind of goes into something else I wanted to bring up, because one thing that made Saban great is his discipline. Like, his teams were disciplined. That was something that you knew if you played Alabama and you made a mistake, you were going to make the mistake because his teams weren't going to penalize themselves. They weren't going to get in trouble. And I was looking at offensive line penalties yesterday because of a conversation me and Coach Hayes had. And I noticed something that really stuck out to me. Last year, Alabama's offensive line was penalized 27 times in the year. They averaged, I think it was 2 penalties per game, and that carried over into the postseason. They still had 2 penalties per game in their loss. Now, when you look at Georgia's offensive line penalties last year, 13.
Wow.
And I'm like, that's really something that doesn't get discussed enough when it comes to the Kirby Smart difference at being at Georgia. Georgia is so much more disciplined now
So
than they
13
were
compared to
previous.
what?
27.
13 compared to 27.
And some of those teams, I saw that graphic. There were a lot of teams that had 30, 40 or more. Some of those penalties, but yeah, you see the difference in Kirby Smart's coaching.
And I looked at the new offensive line coach, and his I forget his name for Alabama, but his past offensive line this past year was at 23. So I mean, it's not that I'm going to blame the coach for the offensive lineman, but I'm just saying, like, I know the response will be, well, this coach, that coach ain't here anymore. Yeah, but it's like, is there more of a disciplinarian out there than Nick Saban?
Yeah. Isn't it? It's that Eastern European name. Is it Chris Kapilovich or something like that?
I believe so.
I think that's right. Yeah.
And that's one reason I forgot it, because I can't pronounce it.
No, I can't either. We apologize for our southernness in the pronunciation of your name, sir.
Well, the thing about it is, and we'll be honest, we were glad to see Saban go. We were like, okay, let's go ahead and kick this thing on over. This, we talked about Alabama being a tough habit to break, and they still are, apparently. And obviously, DeBoer is going to have his opportunity to make his own future. But if we want to be honest about it, and we have talked to other teams, we talked to those fans of USC and told them to be patient. Don't get ahead of your skis, and because it's really embarrassing when you do. Because they're all people will cash those receipts in. We just live to do that. Everybody does nowadays. But just looking at DeBoer's history, his coaching history, it's not bad. But if I can recap it real quick, in the last 5 years or 4 years, he was at Fresno State in 20. And he was 3-3, and Fresno State in 2021. And so just as recently as 2021, he's coaching at Fresno State. So, I'm just saying. And he was 9-3 there. Then he moved on to Washington, and he had 2 good years, 11-2 and 14-1. We don't know. He may be the coach that when he put him among in that situation, he thrives and gets better, and his career just takes off. Or he might be that coach who had Michael Penix. We don't know yet. That's the whole point of it. Before then, if you want to pull up his whole coaching resume and say, well, he's got 100 and this many wins. Yeah, but most of those came at a school called Sioux Falls. Okay, so if you're going to tout that, Sioux Falls played teams like Hastings, Morningside, Midland Lutheran, Nebraska Wesleyan, Concordian, Briarcliff. These sounds like private schools in high school. That's what it sounds like.
There's a Lutheran and a Methodist church in there.
So my whole point is not to just hate on everything that's not Georgia. So go ahead and say that. But I'm skeptical. And I think we have a right to be skeptical because
Judy.
because you don't lose Saban and get better.
And Bama's a brand that you never want to see go away, right? They've done something that no team has ever done. I can remember living in Georgia and kids, seeing teenagers that get to be that age where you start to pay attention to college football. And even though they lived in Georgia, they'd claim to be Alabama fans just because Alabama won every year, right? And so, I'm an Alabama fan. Never been to Alabama, can't find Tuscaloosa on a map, but they're Alabama fans because of the standard and the winning that Nick Saban had put. It's hard to let that go. That's what it is. It's hard to say, maybe It's possible this guy that's never dealt with elite players and elite attitudes, and there's a lot of them. And like Eric said earlier, when you're talking about the transfer portal, you're talking about a different type of attitude. You're talking about a hired gun type of attitude that spells trouble, and you need a guy that is entrenched in his culture. And that's what I'm not sure that that DeBoer can bring to Bama, Eric.
Yeah, even Saban got tired of dealing with that. Go up his last quote from when he decided to hang it up, when he was talking about how kids were coming in more worried about how much money you were going to pay them and what their playing time was going to be. I think that's a clear nod to the transfer portal, because transfer guys are coming in for one thing and one thing only: to get more eyes from the NFL on them. Because if they had playing time, a significant playing time at the place they were before, they wouldn't have transferred to a new school.
Nice.
Yeah, and I'll say again, we're all about trying to be fair, even if we do have fun at your expense. Our rivals and other teams, we enjoy that. And shoot, I'm not going to lie and say I don't want Alabama to have a couple of tough years. I mean, it's time.
They've earned it. They've earned it. Yeah.
We want to kick them when they're down a little bit. We've enjoyed kicking them in the off season, and we want to continue to kick them. But like you said, you can't. It's easier said than done to create that culture. That culture is the most important thing, and it's what sustains Georgia right now. Keeps them striving to be the absolute best and not having any setbacks. Really, I mean, you lose one game, 42-2 the last 44 games. Georgia is driven by Coach Kirby Smart and that culture he's implemented. And it's easier to say you want to do it, but until you do it, we're going to be skeptical that DeBoer and his coaching staff, Kane, Womack, and I can't remember the other guys, until they're actually able to do it and to go through a season or two where everything doesn't go right. And we said this when Saban left earlier in the year. They don't just need to maintain what Bama was doing. They needed to get better because there was something missing. And Eric just showed us that with this graphic, that something was missing, something was going in the wrong direction, and it needs to change and get better. And maybe DeBoer is that guy. We're going to be skeptical until he actually proves it. And obviously we are going to look through Georgia red and black glasses, but we're going to enjoy it. And we do predict that they're going to have some hard times. So this is one of those clips that we'll pull up later and say, Dog Show predicted that Alabama was going to have some hard times. I'm not saying 5 losses, but it's going to take a while to establish the things that he wants to do, if he can do it at all.
Right. And I thought that's a great thing. I was thinking right along those lines. What would put DeBoer on the hot seat? Would it be 3 losses? I would say yes. I would say if this team comes out and has 3 losses this year, all of the shine is gone. If he comes out, they make the playoffs with 2 losses and win a game, he'll be fine. But if he comes out and they lose 3 games, what it is very unwise to do, and it's possible DeBoer is an improvement over Saban. Well, that's kind of true. I mean, it's possible that Toup Brinson is an improvement over Nick Saban. It's highly unlikely, but it is possible because we've never seen Toup Brinson coach for Alabama, right? So, I mean, I guess it is possible, but Alabama has never before had to have false hope going into a season. In the recent seasons, they've never had to have someone take to the airwaves to say, all that you've seen, you might not have really seen. It might just be part of this whole. We saw it last year with that revenge tour. Remember Saban revenge tour? I feel sorry for the rest of college football.
Murder ball.
Murder ball. Here it comes. Here they come. And that's where we start. When did Alabama need a herald? When did Alabama need someone to talk smack for them? They were just Alabama. They didn't need all of that. Now they need it. People are coming to their aid. That tells us it's better to bet on the under, so to speak.
Well, if they lose, they come out and lose 2 or 3 games. Here's what it's going to be. It's going to be, dang it, well, Milton just not that guy. He's not good at quarterback, and they're going to look to the next quarterback. That's going to be the problem.
Milroe. You said Milton because you were thinking about Tennessee.
I said it. I said Milton because I was going to make the point. That's just.
I'm sorry.
You called me right. You got it right. I didn't mean to say Milton, but my point was going to be just like Tennessee with with Milton. That's exactly what they did.
Yeah.
And they were ready to compete and to have a big offense just like they did with Hooker. And as soon as Milton started, couldn't put up the same numbers, and Milroe, he's not a typical quarterback either. And so if they do lose a couple games, they're going to pin it all on him. And then it's going to be, well, who's the next quarterback? It'll take 2 or 3 years before they start to figure out, just like with Lincoln Riley. We heard that last week where they're starting to question if he is that guy. It'll take a little while. They're going to give DeBoer a chance, I think. But
Lincoln Riley may just not be as good as we thought he was.
Yes.
Right there.
That's what they say. Yeah. That's the feeling. And that'll come. Like I said, I think that there's going to be a lot on the shoulders of Milroe to improve. He may come out and show you that he's improved his passing, and that's the missing link for that offense, him to be able to do that consistently, move the chains, and not – because teams have got a whole season now of watching what they want to do with him and how to attack him.
True. Yeah.
And you got teams like Georgia who are not going to make the same mistakes that they made last year against this team. And it could be Georgia coming in there the 4th week of the season and putting a stamp on Alabama and putting their foot on them a little bit. And that realization may come early that we a couple steps below where we thought we were.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, love it. Anyway, that's where I hope it goes.
3 things came to mind when you were saying that. One, would we be saying the same? Okay, not we. Would the media and Alabama fans be saying the same thing if it wasn't Kalen DeBoer hired, but Sonny Dykes? Because he got to the national championship also.
Nice.
The second thing is, what defenses has his offense seen? Pac-12 defenses? I mean, yeah, you made the playoff. So, like, they didn't even play Alabama. Like, what defenses have you seen?
Aside from coming in and playing Texas, where's elite anything that you've ever seen? And the jury's still out on how elite Texas actually is. I think that's a great point, and that, you don't understand what it's like to play a Missouri. You don't understand what that is. A team that's just an afterthought in the SEC would be a team that would absolutely thump people in other conferences across this country. You don't understand what that is. I remember Tennessee made the mistake a few years ago of saying, well, we did take that loss to Georgia, but all we've got now is South Carolina. And then what happened? South Carolina put a whooping on them, right? These teams that are in the SEC, you don't understand what it's like to see that every single week. You coach your team as building up for 1 or 2 key moments throughout the season until you get to the SEC. And then every week you're playing someone that can beat you.
And that's why the coaching is so important throughout that season, because it does take a toll on you. It's the mental toll it takes to get up every week in a conference like the SEC. There's no other conference like them. Every week, that mental toll to prepare and to be on top of everything. You have to be sharp as you can be, or you will take a loss. You will get beat. And for a coaching staff has to prove that they can get that out of their players and keep them on the right path and say the right things, connect with these kids. And anyway, we don't know one way or another how it's going to turn out. We do have skeptical eyes and skeptical minds when it comes to other schools, because it seems to be more or less likely to fail than it does to succeed in a lot of these situations. We've seen how it happened with, did Florida think that they were going to take a tumble in their program? Did Tennessee think it was going to take them that long to get on top? What about Florida State? These teams think they're always going to be on top. And you're not just Alabama because Alabama. Certain things still have to happen. Yeah. And maybe they do, but it's just as likely that they don't. And you look back and say, well, Board's a good coach, but he's just not SEC quality. He just couldn't keep going what we had going for the past 10, 15 years, and that's more likely to be.
And Troop, where Bama hangs all their hope is on that victory over Georgia, which I would too. I mean, that makes sense. You beat the best team in football on that day, just like when Texas A&M beat Alabama when they were the best team in football. Those types of things do happen. My point is, Alabama fans do not focus on the last game Alabama played when they played against Michigan. And when they played against Michigan and they got out there and they played an un-Alabama game and left the field with an un-Alabama result, that just And that's when Saban said the thing he said about players throwing their helmets, which, by the way, he was talking about the quarterback. He's talking about the quarterback for that football team and the attitudes of his players. And he decided that was a good moment to ride off into the sunset, which he did. But that's the part that doesn't get talked about. When you speak to an Alabama fan, it's about that 3-point win against Georgia. It's not about what happened to them in their next game. And I think that's more of a microcosm of what they've got ahead of them.
We shall see how the trends fall, and great work there by the Bulldawg Report. And
as
Eric,
always,
we appreciate that. When you sent that to us, I'm like, we're going to use that. That's going to be a segment. And
so
it's
good,
just
man.
So good stuff to kind of bring home what we've been thinking and talking. We'll see if that continues, see if the trends change at all, and they're going to have to for Alabama to have the same kind of success. Eric, anything you want to close with, buddy?
I was going to add one thing. So you were talking about, a team thinking it was always going to be that. I'm sure if you go back to the late 80s, early 90s, Miami thought they were always going to be there. Miami hasn't even won the ACC since they left the Big East.
Wow.
There's no
think about that. Like if there was ever a team that thought that they were always going to be there.
Yeah, you're right. History is cruel.
They still suffer from some of that false bravado. Dude. A lot of these teams do, don't they? That false bravado. And we just kind of laugh at them like, dude, that's not you anymore. Nobody cares about what happened 20 years ago or 30 years ago anymore, or 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, because what matters is what happens when we play football this year and where that's headed. So, all right. Well, we do appreciate you.
Where can we find you, buddy?
All right. You can find me at Report Bulldawg on Twitter and the Bulldawg Report on Facebook. I also have a blog that's at thebulldawgreport.com.
You just started writing some more articles there, right? I saw a couple.
Yes.
Must follow Bulldawg Report.
Must follow. Information. Mandatory, imperative follow for any Bulldog fan.
Thank y'all.
All right, buddy. Talk to you soon. All right, Eric Taylor, and we said it. We'll continue to say it. A must follow for all dog fans and even non-dog fans. It's good stuff to kind of let you know where things stand. And sometimes the numbers can paint a strange picture, but a lot of times those numbers tell the real story. Yeah. And it at least helps you add some substance to what you feel. So we appreciate you, Eric.
What he does, Troop, is they're common sense numbers. They're not like you're chasing a rabbit, right? And you're trying to find anything to give your team an edge or credibility in an upcoming game or upcoming season or anything. He just notices trends. And so you and I, one of the things that's made our show catch on is that we're very good at noticing trends, but we do it from an organic standpoint, watching the game. Eric does it from the inside, from the analytical standpoint, from looking at the actual numbers and coming out. And that's why I think his stuff harmonizes so well on this show. So thanks for Eric. Bulldawg Report, mandatory follow. Check it out.
All right. So something interesting that did come out today, I think, as EA Sports, their college football game that they're a much anticipated release coming out July 19th.
I've taken the day off. I just want to say I've taken the day off for the release of that game. Yes.
They're doing a good job of kind of giving us little snippets and little pieces as we go. And so they tell you, of course, what the strength of a team is, what they think offenses, defenses. And we try to match that up with what we think about our team, what we think about college football right now. Right. And when it doesn't quite match up, we got questions. And yes, all the sports world has questions about some of these. So we'll go through it quickly. Let's just hit the top 10 right now, unless something else pops out. And I will say there's inclusions and exclusions. But Georgia is tied for number one right now, ranked number one, 94 overall offensive power or power ranking. Oregon, number 2, 94 overall offensive power. Alabama's number 3 with 91. Texas, number 4 with 91. Then Ohio State at number 5 with 89. So they dropped below 90. I thought that even might be a question because their offense that's really a question mark for me.
That seems a bit high. Yeah.
LSU at number 6, again with 89.
No problem with that. Yeah.
Miami with 7. That's kind of confusing too with 89. Colorado, number 8 with 89.
That's not questionable. That's delusional, but go ahead.
Missouri, number 9 with 89. And then
I'm with
Clemson.
that.
Clemson has 87, and they're tied with a number of teams that drop below 10. But we'll just stick right there with Clemson.
Yeah.
And talk about there's one team in there that just is not like the others in terms of reality. Like you said, delusion. Can you folks figure who that is?
It's Colorado, Troop Brinson. I remember when Deion Sanders left the Falcons and he spent a couple of years going to other teams, right? He went to San Francisco and then he went to the Cowboys. And he had an enormous impact because he's an all-time player. But listen, we're from Georgia. We love prime time. All right. He's not an all-time coach. And the idea that his showing up in Colorado suddenly gives them top 20 credibility on both sides of the ball is insane.
And there's a reason we say that. It's not just to be a hater. And that's what the Deion fans and fanatics will say. You're just haters. No, listen to this. They have Colorado Buffaloes. They have them in this power index tied for the 5th best offense in the game. The 5th best offense in the game. Last year, if you want to know some numbers, Colorado was 99th nationally in yards per play. And they didn't sign, even if they had signed a number 1 class, it takes 3 or 4 years to really rebuild a team.
100%.
They have right now currently the number 22 class in the country. And so make that math work. 99 last year nationally in yards per play, and only a number 22 ranked class so far. And Deion doesn't really recruit anyway. But
no, what I'm hearing from Colorado fans when I engage them online is that they are banking. They're saying every offensive woe that they had last year was because Shedeur did not have protection, and they've got transfers on the offensive line, and that's going to fix everything. So a bunch of guys no one's ever heard of, they were hidden gems apparently, and now they're coming to Colorado and everything is fixed.
Yeah. And we laugh at that because we know what that's about. That's just trying to capitalize a little bit on a team that's overhyped. Exponentially overhyped is Colorado. And I even heard another pundit say 9-3 is their floor. Again, that might have been, that was an NFL guy. I can't remember which one it was. I saw 9-3 is what he was saying. And but there's another team on here that's not on here. That it's funny. You can hit laugh tracks on this all day long.
Right.
It's funny that those Tennessee fans think that they are God's gift to offense and that Josh Heupel is Josh Heupel, and because Josh Heupel that they can't play offensively. And so Nico, the number 1, apparently we read this, the number 1 quarterback in football. Number 1 player in football.
Number 1 player in football. Get used to his name. We heard that.
And that's not just the number 1 new player or I guess he's a redshirt freshman, or did he lose his redshirt? I don't know.
Redshirt. I think he's redshirt.
He's not the number 1 new quarterback coming in that we're going to see for the first time. They're saying he is the best player in football. And so they are shocked right now that EA Sports would have the nerve to not put them in the top 5, to not put them in the top 10. They are nowhere to be seen in this top 25 Smooch EA Sports Power Index offensively.
No, they are behind juggernauts like Virginia Tech. They are behind UCF. They are behind the great and powerful SMU. Troop, they are ranked behind Memphis. Notre Dame, who hasn't played offense in a few seasons. I didn't even know they still had players on offense. And NC State. And I got to say, I actually tweeted today some sympathy for some of these Vol fans because I kind of get that part. I was like, wow. Yeah. But you have to understand the same mindset from EA Sports or from college football cognoscenti that went into putting Colorado so high because they're riding hype also went into putting you so low as Tennessee because they knew how you'd react. Tennessee fans have been pushing EA's content all day long in a fit of illiterate rage spread across all of the Twitter sphere and the social media landscape because they feel slighted, because they think they have the best player in college football.
Yeah, and we're enjoying it because it's funny, because we like to see Tennessee squirm, because they believe exactly the opposite. It's so opposite that just that point makes it funny on its face. But we disagree. We think Tennessee's going to have a pretty good offense this year. I mean, I don't know if they're going to be top 10 offense. They may, but they're going to be ahead of a lot of teams on this list. So Tennessee, we're going to give you a cookie and say we don't just pound on you to pound on you. We just laugh at you when it's convenient for us.
Yeah,
and this is funny.
I do not think Tennessee will finish behind Kansas in total offense. I will go on record as saying that, and Kansas is all the way up at 14. But some of these are like Utah at 11. Those are just there. It's obvious that's there for fun. But the problem is, Troop Brinson, we've noticed this with our delusional fan index. Tennessee has trouble having fun in the football conversation. They take everything very personal, and I guarantee you they lead the SEC in banned accounts on Twitter. I guarantee you they do, because they cannot control their rage.
Now, we're also going to talk about the defensive power index, and we have that pulled up. And no surprise that Georgia's up there at the top again. Georgia, they're predicting Georgia to be a powerhouse, and, of course, that's where Georgia is. Georgia is a powerhouse. Yeah. Georgia is the standard in college football, so we know that. Ohio State is ranked number 1 defensive power index at 96. Man, they're going to be tough to move the ball against, it looks like. Georgia's right there behind them, though, at number 2, 94. And there's a drop-off after that, Smooch. As you go down to Oregon and Alabama, they're 90. Clemson's 90 at number 5. Notre Dame, 90. All these teams are 90. Michigan at number 7, 90 overall. And then you drop below 90 at Texas at 88. Penn State at 88. Utah at 10 at 88. Then a number of other teams right there below with 88, 86 as well.
Yeah, I think that with some of these, I mean, Notre Dame is always going to be high. They're just going to be high on every game. They're going to be high in the preseason commentators as well. They're going to be high. That's just how it works for Notre Dame. They're not a top 6 defense. They won't finish as a top 20 defense. Penn State's another one. Utah always has a very mature team. They usually do play pretty good defense. I think Iowa's a joke, especially after what happened to them at the end of the season last year. That's a joke there. I honestly, and I don't want to kick a dog when it's down, Troop Brinson, but USC at 16 still feels really high.
We saw, but you put another 1 in front of them, and that's where they finished last year at 116.
That's right.
116. If you can make that kind of a change, I mean, you go ahead and give Coach of the Year to Lincoln Riley or the athletic director for bringing Coach Henney in. If it makes that much of a difference.
A 100 spot improvement. That's never been done. But there again is the darling of the media right now, Colorado, sneaking into that top 20 at 20.
Colorado is not going to be a top 20 defense.
They didn't even play defense last year. That's like, I mean, you basically didn't have a team that played defense last year. So now you're just starting out with a top 20 defense.
I mean, if you're giving up 40 and 50 points routinely, not in the conversation as a legitimate defense. And, but it's entertainment. Yeah. And so we understand that part of it. But we just want to laugh and have a good time and call it out. It may, in terms of the game, may make those teams more playable. And so you don't just grab that team that you're excited that's been hyped and get just run through. And so, but in reality,
what you do if you're a Georgia fan is you start out with Georgia Southern or Georgia State. You take one of those guys and you start out as a coordinator and you work your way up. So when that Colorado job comes open after you've had a couple of winning seasons and you can take that Colorado job, you jump right on it because you got a team with a top 10 offense and a top 20 defense. So you're going to jump on that. It's going to make the game more playable and more fun. And I think that is probably what they're saying. This is a game, people. It's a game. It's a video game. And the people that will be the best at this game have never played football. It's important to remember all of that. The people that designed this game have never played football. It's about having fun. They recognize that Ohio State and Georgia, and then there's a huge drop-off nationally with everyone else. And Ohio State is not even proven where Georgia is. Ohio State, if you look at them on paper, it's hard to argue against that number one ranking, but paper doesn't always work out. But it's just meant to be fun. And the only reason we're having so much fun is because how upset it's making everyone else.
We ought to, if we had time, we ought to have some comments from the fan bases who did get triggered by this release.
We'll put some up. We'll put some up right here.
But yeah, kudos to EA Sports. They know what they're doing, and we're highly anticipating this game coming out in less than a month now.
Yeah,
and so I know you will too, folks. It has been a big week, and we told you that June is always big in terms of visits and official visits and the shows that these schools put on for these athletes as they come in, all the big visits. And Georgia's been getting some commitments. We did see, I suspect, that Isaiah Gibson did not flip back or did not go to Tennessee. He didn't end up going to Ohio State or Alabama. He didn't flip back to USC. He did commit to the hometown Georgia Bulldogs all along. We played the long game, the waiting game, and Kirby Smart does it the right way. And so we got that commitment as well as a couple more.
Yeah, the Isaiah Gibson one felt great when he sent out that we were all, by the way, every Georgia fan knew exactly what Isaiah Gibson was talking about when he sent out that text. Everywhere I've been, there's one team everybody wants to talk about. And that was, we were high-fiving behind the scenes. We weren't gonna go public with it, but we knew what was coming when that one particular team was mentioned. And then he committed to that one particular team. Isaiah Gibson, you don't need us to tell you how talented he is. You know, and if you don't know, you will soon know. So.
And Georgia also got a commitment from interior offensive lineman and Dontrell Glover. You saw that, another 4-star. And that's the way Georgia makes things happen on the line of scrimmage for sure. And then a couple wide receivers, Smooch. They had one wide receiver that and this is very interesting. Let's go ahead and mention the wide receivers that committed first.
Yeah.
And that is Tyler Williams, not the same Tyler Williams. This Tyler Williams is from Florida. He's a speedster. He's not. He's I can't remember if he's the fast guy. I know that.
That's Roldan.
Roldan. Yeah, Roldan's 4.38, 4.37. So two highly coveted wide receivers that Georgia had established or had focused on and made it a point to get them involved and to recruit them. And so we added 2 wide receivers. There's one wide receiver, Smooch, that it looks like we might have lost him to Florida State. It's strange because everybody knew that he was either going to go to LSU or Georgia. It was one of those schools.
His parents went to LSU, and he liked Georgia, and then he chose the third team.
He chose Florida State, and it was just strange because even when they announced it, it was a subdued reaction from the crowd and then from his crew at the table. And then it just seemed amiss. Something seemed off. And then he left it wide open when he should have said,
recruiting is wide open.
He should have said, I am home.
Right.
I love everything about this school. I'm home. It feels good to be a part of Seminole Nation. I can't wait to get on campus. These are my guys. It's my family. He said nothing of the sort. He said, I haven't signed any papers yet. I'm open to recruitment.
Yeah, it feels so much like KJ Bolden all over again. And I don't want to say we don't have any inside information. We just have experience there. That is, we watched KJ Bolden commit to Florida State, and we were being told, hey, he hasn't shut down his recruiting yet. And now he's a Georgia Bulldog. The same type of feeling here that he had his moment and his commitment. And like you said, the room, it was awkward. That room felt weird when he committed to Florida State, almost as though there was surprise. And someone in the back had to go, yeah, there it is. So
thought it was a joke, or he's going to change the hats and say, gotcha.
Right. Which I think there's a good chance he may change the hats and say, gotcha. Yeah. It just will be closer to National Signing Day. But let's talk about who we've got. who is on board. Tyler Williams, he's out of Scheffner, Florida. I've never heard of Scheffner, Florida. I have heard of Armwood, the school he came out of. The 4-star, you mentioned him earlier. He's thick. He's already over 200 pounds at 6'1". He's a solid guy. He's also they say he's incredibly cut. Looks like an anatomy chart with his shirt off. Known for circus catches, known for ball skills, and just being a football player. That's what everybody that watches him says. The kid can just play football. And
his school, I don't think his school really was a passing school either. So the numbers he put up were very impressive just to come from a school that didn't throw a ton.
Yeah, his quarterback was recruited as a defensive back, and so right, not a real passing first type of offense, but the guy that Kirby, Eric just mentioned this, right? Kirby just identifies these guys and gets them on campus, and then London Roldan, he is a late bloomer if there ever was one. Just kind of came out of nowhere. He went to all the camps and all the little things this summer. When he was in Athens, he ran a laser-timed 4.38 40-yard dash, Drew Brinson, at 6 feet tall, 180 pounds. Already known for his route running, and then you put up that kind of numbers, tested through the roof. Still a 3-star. And so, of course, his comps are Ladd McConkey because he and Ladd have the same paint job, as they say. But just one of those prospects that Kirby brings in that people are ignoring because everybody's flocking to the other guy. But both of those guys are solid gets, and they fit exactly what Kirby is looking for. We're seeing a lot more twitch at the wide receiver position in these last few recruiting cycles.
And what I've heard about Roldan, he was gaining momentum for the past few weeks. We kept hearing his name, kept popping up. This is a guy, don't sleep on this guy. He's going to rise. His if you're worried about, rankings, don't. First of all, if Georgia deems, if you're worthy of a scholarship at Georgia, they're not going to waste those. They're really not.
That's right. They don't throw them away.
And so they don't at all. They try to create space sometimes to get these new guys to come in here. And so that's why they don't mind transfers a lot of times. But we were hearing the smoke on him and that he was a fast riser. He's worked out for Georgia and ran that 4.38, and everything else he did just screamed, pay attention to me. I'm going to be a big time player. I did hear if people are thinking about Ladd McConkey because you said the paint job. What I read today was that, Ladd McConkey is so quick. So Ladd is up to speed immediately. He's got that really small space quickness. And I read that Roldan was more, he was
straight
more
line
from the 20 to 40. He had his max speed between 20 and 40 yards. So he will run by you, but just a different player than Ladd McConkey. But with elite athleticism and speed too, just a different sort.
Yeah, he's not a phone booth. Ladd McConkey was what you call a phone booth player, right? Ladd McConkey can make you miss inside of a phone booth. That's not this kid. This kid's he's a different player. He's a strider. And once he gets to full speed, no one's catching him. But they're different players. It's unfair to characterize them strictly based on paint. But either way, 4.38 is 4.38. We want 4.38 on campus at UGA, and that's fabulous news.
Who is quarterback in that Florida State this year? Is DJ Ungalele, whatever his name is?
You are correct, sir.
And I think so. I was just thinking back about the Wiley. Once Carson Beck throws for 4,500 yards this year or 4,000 plus yards this year, and their offense is going off, which we fully anticipate to happen. Yeah, those commitments, not even just CJ Wiley's. He's a receiver Georgia really wants, but there may be some other, whether it be transfer. People looking to go to a school that does have good quarterback play and does have a good offense. And Georgia's shown you that in the last few quarterbacks. It's not just one quarterback. Kirby Smart's adapted, and he's fine throwing the ball. He's fine featuring that talent if that's where the talent is. If you don't have that quarterback, then he's going to run the ball. He can do what it takes to win. But I think some of these receivers is starting to come around, and we've heard the talk. In the recruiting cycle, as these receivers start to hear, they've been recruited negatively against Georgia. Other schools have, and they look at the numbers and the Georgia top 3 offense, Georgia top 5 offense over and over, and they see the passing yards, 4,000 yards. That sinks in, and you're able to get some of these top flight receivers. If not, then you do what Georgia does and you win by development and you win with depth. And when you play in an SEC, we've shown it over and over. You need that depth because these guys are going to they're going to get hurt at the worst time, just like Ladd McConkey and Bowers did, just like some of these other schools. Their best players get hurt. Seems to be at the worst times a lot. And so you better have that depth if you want to win championships.
Just as the negative recruiting worked in Georgia's favor on defense with Isaiah Gibson, Kirby is just starting to turn the corner where the negative recruiting on offense is going to start to be an assistance and a help as well. And I think Wiley may be that guy. I would be surprised if Wiley starts the season at Florida State. Let's put it that way. I'm not saying he's coming to Georgia. I'm saying I'd be surprised if after National Signing Day, Wiley is at Florida State. I'd be surprised. It doesn't mean it can't happen. It just means I'd be surprised.
So a lot that happened, and we got the dead period coming up for July. Did I hear they extended that all the way through the end of July? I read something today that's going to make a lot better for coaches where they can, don't have these recruits coming in the week before their high school season starts. But these players are going to be making their commitments, and they've kind of collected all the information they need. The ones who aren't going to carry it all the way through December or the late signing, they're going to make some decisions in this next month. There's still a lot going on. Our nose is to the ground, or is it in? So we're hearing our ear is to the ground.
Either way, both ears and nose.
Nose and ear.
Troop's ear, my nose. That's what we.
And we know some decisions are going to be made really soon to be made public, and we can't wait to hear those.
Yeah.
And Smooch, we had one of our best weeks last week on YouTube. Tell us about what's going on our YouTube page.
We really did. We just in the last few months we've kind of figured out the YouTube thing. Our show there has just taken off. You guys have been great. We've grown exponentially over the last few weeks. We're a baby show, especially in video format. And every time when I talk to people that know a lot more about this than we do, we know actually very little about the promotion side and how to promote yourself on the social medias or whatever. But when I talk to them we talk numbers, they're oh, wow, that's great. You guys have great growth. And so we're having great growth and we're doing it in the off season. So we're just hoping to carry this momentum. But man, at the Dog Show Pod on YouTube, check out the video. If the podcast really, and this is from our fans, not from us, the podcast, it really hits home, the video version, because of all of you heard Eric on here tonight. Eric is amazing with spreadsheets and graphics. And if you if you're not watching the video, you're not seeing those inarguable numbers displayed. And that's the kind of thing we do with the visual aids there. So check us out on YouTube, give us a follow. I think we've tripled our following in just 6 weeks, something like that. So it's been going well.
Yep, the Dog Show Pod across all platforms, whether it be Twitter or TikTok or YouTube. And we're still highly engaged in all of those. You can come on and join it with us. We got people that we're setting up interviews. That's another step we've taken as a podcast as we've made some connections with some other people around the sport. Mm-hmm. And so we got some of those. Hopefully they can use Zoom and they can get on the Dog Show Pod, and that would be great.
That would be.
That's where we need to be at. If you want to be on a Dog Show Pod, figure out how Zoom works.
Yeah, figure that Zoom thing out, and then we'll roll. That's it.
All right, man. It's been a good show. We do thank once again Eric Taylor from the Bulldawg Report. Give him a follow. Otherwise, we'll see you folks on the flip side. Been another spectacular edition of the Dog Show.
You are too stuck up your stupid butt heads.
This is the Dog Show with Toup and Smooch.
Dog Show. It's the Dog Show. It's the Dog Show. It's the Dog Show.
McConkey, he got on his donkey.